Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing? So typically on this channel, The Future is Cheap Now, here on YouTube, I have a great interest in financial markets, and I talk about the generational opportunity that I believe is in Bitcoin and the monetary system, macro factors, and there's quite a few videos that I've done since the beginning of the year that I encourage those who might be interested in that stuff to check it out. I've had a couple people reach out to me, and then my brother actually had mentioned, I've mentioned on the channel that I'm a master in the merchant marine and I work on ships all over the world. And my brother, he was like, I'd really be interested in seeing, because I sent him some pictures from stuff I do. He said he'd really be interested in seeing kind of some of this stuff. So what I'm going to do now, if and you can stick around if you're interested, is a lot of what I do is classified and I can't share a lot of stuff that I do. But this little thing that I just did was on the USNS Martin. And I've seen pictures floating around on the internet. Well, I was the officer in charge on the Martin, and it was a very interesting operation. So I'm going to walk everyone through pictures for the Martin. So when I first came to the Martin, here's me right here, and you can see out to the bow of the Martin. I took this in Virginia when we were shifting docks. I came on, and they announced we had to shift the next day. We had to shift docks. Now it was a dead ship because they're preparing the Martin. They were shifting it from Military Sealift Command, who had it before. They were shifting it to the Maritime Administration, MARAD. So they were shifting it to a yard period. Here we are coming alongside the dock and the yard, the little yard period that we were going to do. You're not doing a dry dock where they pull you out of the water, but it's in the water dock here. Then one of the big operations they had to do concerned some work on the stern ramp. So the Martin, the USNS, the Harry Martin, is about 750 feet long, and it's kind of has these row like car decks, and then it has this huge several hundred ton stern ramp where you can deploy the stern ramp onto the land, and you can drive on and off tanks and all kinds of stuff. There were some issues when I got there. The stern ramp hadn't been put out in a long time, but we had to put it out onto a barge where contractors at this yard could work on it. My career, going back, just backing up a little bit, I graduated from the California Maritime Academy in California, and I've worked on a lot of different ships, but I've spent a lot of my career working on car carriers that have ramps, like the one you see in front of you. And here's a little side angle in that same area with the ramp down. But I've worked on a lot of car carriers with ramps like this, and then I've worked on, those are more commercial, and then I've worked on military, like the Bob Hope class LMSRs. They're called long range, medium speed, roll off carriers. I believe that's the term, LMSRs. But those are military, and typically you'll load them up with cargo, and they're pre-positioned all over the world, and then you have your cargo on demand, and they can send in the military, and they're very, very strategic. They've been strategic in other wars. And the Martin, like I said, is about 750 feet long. It's actually a German built ship, and anyways, so they were preparing it to turn it over to MARAD, to put it. It was in an ROS, reserve operating status, which is like, should be activated within a couple days, and then it can be out to do a mission. I've done missions on other ships. I've done humanitarian missions to like Puerto Rico several years ago when they had the storm. I did a humanitarian mission on a vessel. I've done diplomatic missions with different militias. There's all kinds of different stuff you do. But the Martin, Military Sealift Command decided that it was going to go to more of a little bit longer layup status, where it had to have a longer activation, where they put it in, they mothball it. You've seen the mothballs all over the world, or all over the United States. And it was going to Texas. But before you do that, there were certain requirements that had to be met. So here they are. They're going to do some work on the stern ramp. They have to blank things off, and of course then they have to tow it, which I'm going to show you the towing operations. So here's the stern ramp down, and then I got in a boat, and I was checking drafts, and I was looking at stuff, specking out for contractors to paint different areas. Here's the contractors with the scaffolding set up. They They blasted this thing top and bottom, get all the rust and the scale off. Then they painted it. Here it is from looking aft to forward. Now there's a top rail, which I'm up on now. You can see it looks a lot higher in this picture. And if I'm going too fast through the pictures, definitely can look back through the video and you can pause it and look at some of these different things. But this is the top rail. Now this top rail is very important. You're going to find later on, because when we get to Texas, I'd been there. I'd been to Texas before, Port Arthur, where this vessel was going. There's some very low bridges out there. And the highest point on the Harry Martin here is actually the stern ramp, because the arms of the stern ramp stick above. There's a railing, which I'm on right now where I took this picture. But those arms, you can see them at the bottom of this picture, the end of the ramp. Those are arms that stick up high, and they're about they stick up about 15 feet above the railing, and you have to put the ramp at 60 degrees in order to get a appropriate air draft. But here I am up on the top rail, snapping some pictures, scaffolding. Here they are. They've done some paint work. Now here it is prepping for the tow. So once they finished all the work and we pulled the ramp back up, and there was some stuff that went on after we the yard we were in, we had to go out, so another vessel came in, so then we had to shift docks, and we actually shifted multiple times because it was just there isn't really a spot for the Martin. One of the reasons they're sending it to Texas and Marad, so they were rafting me off of other vessels, and we had situations. There was some weather. I don't know if anyone's seen the news in months past. There was some pretty severe weather that went on, and at one point I think I was looking at winds at over 70 miles an hour, and we had some issues with lines, and I had tugs on standby to push us back on the dock. But this is the towing thing. So what you have here is you have right in this picture, they're hooking that thing up. If you look at the bottom there's like a link, a big link, and they're hooking that to a on the bow here. We have I guess a towing where it's like a pin. It's a huge pin, and everything's rated and everything's tested. Then you hook this chain to it, and the chain extends out the bullnose, which is the front of the vessel, and you're going to see other pictures. And I set all this up, and you can see this is it up in the air, and there's a crane lowering these links down. So you had a length of chain that went through the bullnose, and you look up forward, you'll see the bullnose, and I have pictures out to the tug, and there's our towing man. Shout out Andrew if you see this. That's a good picture. But there's the bullnose over there where you can see the chain going out. That's where we're gonna. No, I'm sorry. That's the chalk next to it. The bullnose, you can't see it in this picture. It's actually forward, but this chain goes out the bullnose down to the tug, which has a wire connected to the chain, and they're towing us. Up on the railing, if you can see it, that's an emergency tow line. It was a very interesting process. Here I am again, the chain up in the air, and it's quite an ordeal. We worked through the night, it was several days getting all this set up, and we were meeting requirements from the Navy towing manual. And here you can see coming from the forward thing and going out the bullnose, just getting it in position, because each one of these lengths of chain is one shot, which is 90 feet, and each shot, it weighs about 8,000 pounds, if I remember correctly. So there's quite a bit of forces going on there. Now, here they got a little selfie. You can see this chain on the deck here is the emergency. It's set up for the emergency towing chain that goes out, and then there's a wire off the rail, and this has to be put with bits onto. Well, it has to be put with wires onto they're called bits on the deck where we typically tie up our mooring lines, but we tied the wire to the bits, and then had with the chain as well. And it's only for emergencies. Fortunately, I'll spoiler alert, we didn't have to use it. This here was quite a little ordeal. This is when the tug's towing you, if you get flooding, you experience flooding during the tow, which was about a week and a half. These lights will start flashing, and so they can see from any angles that they're having some flooding situations, and they can come aboard and they can see what exactly is flooding on the vessel, if anything. This was actually the vessel next door. We had an extra length of chain. They pulled it off with their cranes. I just took a picture of that. And then here's some close-ups at some of the emergency, the wiring they hooked up for the tow. And just, hey Andrew, remember, you don't saddle a dead horse. And I learned this one because this is actually rigged incorrectly, because the actually no, this is correct, because the saddle is the metal part there, and it has to be off of the you don't saddle, you don't put the saddle on the end that ends, you put it on the running end of the wire. I'm getting caught in the weeds. Anyways, carrying on. Now here's the tow. They had to tow us out. We had pilots heading out from Virginia, and then we had a lot of assist tugs, and I've got a lot of great pictures, but they were just running on the chain going out the bullnose. And if anyone wants any of these pictures, they can shoot me an email. The future is cheap now at gmail.com, or you can comment and I can give you one. Now, this is the morning of, so this is a little bit out of order because that tug was towing there, but this is the morning of. The tug had to change some of their links because they hooked up 3 other shots of chain before they got to their wire, and they used incorrect shackles that connected the chain, so they had to reconfigure it. Long story short, and I just snapped a picture in the morning. So that chain is going out of it's the front of the ship is called the bullnose. It's going out of our bullnose and then down to the tug. Beautiful tug, really, really nice tug. The Ocean Wave, I've got a lot of great pictures of that. I think it's like 10,000 horsepower. This is us, the last day. We're rafted off of another vessel over here, and we're about ready to get away. See these guys standing down here, got our little gangway. We're just casting off lines, and then we're going to have our non-essential crew all head across the gangway, and the rest of us, we're going to 10 lines for the tugs and then ride it out to the sea buoy. And here we are, pulling away. We have cast off lines, and the tugs are pulling us off. And here we go. And then there's the Ocean Wave starting to pull us around, coming out here. And there she is. She's pulling us out. Now there's a good picture. So you got the tug up in front, the Ocean Wave, and they've got their, I don't know if you can see the chain is kind of thin there, and then it goes down a bit. I think they're just riding it short on the chain for the initial pull. And then we actually had tugs. I think behind us we had a center line, center lead aft, and then we had tugs on the port side there. Here's a good one, the Ocean Wave. Here's another tug up here, maybe coming back around. I think you can see some wakes over here to port on the port side where we got some tugs. I think I see one. I think there's 2 over there. Good one. One of my buddies, I won't tell him, he put his drone up and took some really, really great pictures. Shout out to you, Dave, if you're watching this. Here you go, another great picture from above. You can see our helo decks, you can see our cranes, see the mighty Martin. And here you go, you got the Ocean Wave there is towing us, and they're the ones that are going to tow the vessel all the way to Texas. And then you got tugs tending back aft. I think the guy here to port, I think he was actually, I believe he didn't make up center lead aft. We have a chalk where you can make up and bits inside underneath the stern ramp, but we actually made the tug up to the deck on the port quarter. That's the back side of the ship. On the port side, the left side, the back left side, for those of you that aren't in the maritime lingo. Just some great pictures. Dave did a great job. And it was funny because I got pictures from different people, pilots that were on the beach that snapped some photos. I don't know if I put them all on here, but it was kind of cool. Everybody was watching the ship make its way out. Lots of great pictures. Here we go. There's one. I was up forward. There's one. Now this is the bullnose. I was saying I actually poked my head in the bullnose. We actually had a strap that was caught between the links. You can see that green strap. But this is through the bullnose, and I snapped a photo, and it's going up to the tug, the Ocean Wave. And here we are. Now I came up on the bow because I had to do some. I had to assist, I think, with one of the tugs or something. And so I was out here looking aft, snapping pictures. We had the pilot on the bridge. And this is just the deck looking aft of the mighty Martin. And towed out. I don't know where this one is. Some selfie. Oh yeah, this was something interesting that I saw. It was was a helicopter pulling something in the water. I think they must have been doing some kind of a sonic testing. I thought it was kind of interesting. I'd never seen it before. The pilot had never seen it before. None of us had seen it before. I thought it was kind of interesting, so I snapped a photo. But that helicopter was flying real low, and was just its blades were just thump 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 thump. It's making a lot of noise. It was pretty interesting, flying real low. So here we are. So we had ladders on the port and starboard side, so we all had to disembark. We got the sea buoy and we had to come down. This is a pretty long ladder. I mean, this thing goes up the side of the ship a good, I don't know, 30, 40 feet. It's a long climb. And as we came down to the tugboat we have on port and starboard side, so I'm on the tug now. I've climbed down the ladder, and I'm heading away, and the Ocean Wave has the Martin, and it has begun towing it to its next destination. Here I am, heading away on the tug. Oh, okay. So that's it leaving the Martin. And then I actually ended up going to another vessel, and I was telling I do my other videos on Bitcoin, and I was just making a comment on the economy and the coronavirus, because this is my plane flight going out to Texas. I essentially had, it was myself as well as my crew members, so I think there were 6 of us, and we had our own private plane. It was pretty nice, not gonna lie, but this is interesting. And then the next slide, this is when I got there. So we went out to get some groceries. Well, this was the Walmart. Everything was stripped. The shelves were bare. Of course, everything was in quarantine. Everything was shut down. You couldn't go out, takeout only. But I just snapped some photos of some empty shelves, and I did my video on just the fear being generated by the corona. And like I said in my video, it's obviously scares a lot of people, and you need to wash your hands and don't touch your eyes and whatnot. But the economic implications are going to be interesting. I'd also mentioned in then another video that I did how with gold and silver being extremely cheap, that I had gone out to the pawn shop. Here's one of the pawn shops I went to, Lone Star Pawn in Texas, trying to buy physical silver and gold, because the prices that you're seeing were on the markets, like the GLD, the paper markets, weren't close. You couldn't buy. Like when silver was $12.50 an ounce, you could not buy silver anywhere, online or anywhere. They weren't selling it. So it was an interesting disparity. We'll see if that gets further. Now here we are. So this is back on the Martin. We got aboard. We had some issues. We went out. There was actually some pretty good weather. We originally couldn't get on the ship the first time. And then we went on the next day when the weather was good. We were able to get onto the ship, and actually the steering gear had sheared. The rudder had sheared. We had a rudder lock, and it sheared. There was quite a bit of hydraulic oil to deal with. We took 6 of the heaviest chains and turnbuckles that I had, like cargo chains and turnbuckles, and we secured it in place the best we could. And we didn't actually have any further issues, but it was a bit of a question mark. But we had many tugs heading into Texas, and it really wasn't an issue. But here's the ramp at 60 degrees. It's important to get it at 60 degrees. Now I've got this picture. I'm back up top. So this is the highest point on the ship. This railing is the highest point, this railing, and you can see I kept lowering the ramp to about 60 degrees where those arms are below the railing. Because when the ramp is fully raised, they stick up about 15 feet above this railing, and you can hit bridges. This vessel has hit bridges in the past. You can find it online. It hit a bridge in Jacksonville, and it was very bad. I didn't want to do that. So here it is at 60 degrees, the highest point. That's that railing I took the picture from up there. And this picture, so what happened was, I'm going to back up just a tad. So we headed in. I put the stern ramp down about 6 times without an issue. Initially there were some issues, but they were like hydraulic leaks. Everything got fixed, and I hadn't had an issue. And the ramp was quirky. We had to massage a little bit. There were some limit switch issues, but nothing electrical, nothing that really limited the functioning of the ramp, so I wasn't too concerned about. Well, the thing was, when we started heading into Texas, the ramp wouldn't go down. So we had about 2 hours until the bridge of concern, the low bridge, so the whole time when I ballasted this vessel, the entire time I was worried about the bridge. The Martin Luther King Jr. Bridge in Port Arthur, Texas, has an air draft, which is from the water to the bridge. That's the air draft. That bridge is 136 feet above the water. Well, I put a lot of water back aft, and I just about did everything I could, and I even put more water than I was supposed to because I had to get get the numbers right. But even with everything that I did, my air draft was about 134.6 feet. So I had about a 1.4 feet to play with, and that's with the stern ramp down at 60 degrees. If it was up, we would have hit it by 12 feet, 13 feet. So it was very important. Well, the other consideration I had is once we got up to Beaumont, where we were going to the MARAD Reserve Fleet, the water was extremely shallow there. So I'd have to pull off an anchor, and then I had to transfer about 900 tons of water from aft to forward. And I had very, very small amount of wiggle room. I had about 3 inches of wiggle room because if I had too much water, then I wasn't going to be able to get my draft low enough. So I wasn't able to get how deep I am in the water low enough to where I was going to clear the obstructions underneath the ship going into that anchorage. So you had stuff above you and you had stuff below you, and it was a very I don't want to say tricky. It was an imprecise thing because we had we filled up through the manhole covers, the big covers for the ballast tanks down below. We filled them up with it was fresh water using 2.5-inch fire hoses and just fresh water, and then we actually emptied out our forepeak with submersible pumps. And then once we got to Texas, the plan was to use 2 submersible pumps to shift that water from back aft up forward. But yes, here's the chief engineer and myself. We did it, Chief. Shout out if you watch this. Now here's the first bridge. I mean, honestly, the bridge looks like it's going to hit our cranes, and the cranes aren't even the highest point. It was pretty close. The other thing is you have to do a daylight transit only for a tow like this. Daylight transit only, but unfortunately, daylight transit only is at high tide, which there's about a half a foot to a foot tidal range. So we actually ended up having less than a foot clearing this ramp. So here we go. We pass under the bridge. Here are some of the junior pilots riding along. Now this is not the highest point, but they are pretty close right here. The highest point, like I said, is that railing back aft. Now there's that railing. We ended up clearing, I figure, it was under a foot. It was extremely close. Now the ramp was lower. This forward part of this rail, because it comes forward on the starboard side. That was the closest point, and it was less than a foot. It was very, very, very tight, and tightest I've ever come to a bridge before. This was the next bridge. There was another bridge after this. Now this bridge was supposed to have 7 more feet of clearance, but there were these lights hanging down. These lights hung down probably 4 feet. This one, I'd say we cleared at probably 2 or 3 feet. It was very, very small. It was not what we thought we were going to have. So backing up, and I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Backing up. So that picture I took where I showed the ramp, you notice this is at a berth. You're like, how are you at the berth? I thought you were transiting. Well, like I said, we couldn't put the ramp down, so I had to go to an emergency berth right before the bridge, because otherwise we would have hit the bridge, and we had to tie the ship up, and then we weren't really planning on it, so there was nobody aboard, so I ended up running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and then we pulled up into the mud. Everything worked out. We got the technician. It's not Murphy's Law, it's Martin's Law, because if it's going to go wrong, it's going to happen on the Martin. It's pretty interesting. I mean, out of nowhere, 3 bad relays and the e-stop all decided to just go bad. So we clear the bridge. The bridge is, here's the tug, bring us into the anchorage. Now we're anchored here. we had to actually, I used my forward mooring line. I hooked it up to the tow line once we got in here, and they started pulling in their links. And then when they got to like the last link and a half of their chain, a length and a half, they had about a shot and a half. It was through the bull nose up forward, so I hooked it with I used a wire. I put it through one of the links of chain, and then I took a shackle and I ran it back to my my mooring line. I had Spectra lines, which are hold 50,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds, very very strong lines, and I lowered it with my my forward mooring line to the tug. Now we're anchored here. This is me looking down into the ballast tank because we were filling. Remember, I'm shifting water from back aft up forward because I got to get the stern up and the bow down, because when I got out of there, I was about 27 and a half down by the stern, and I was about 21 and a half at the bow. I needed to be less than 25, both fore and aft, in order to get into the Marad anchorage. Here's the cows. It was interesting, and there's some pictures here. You could literally, I had the stern ramp. I still had it at 60 degrees. We found out later on there were wires. There were like electrical wires right before the Marad anchorage. So it was tricky because I had to do this ballasting now with my port anchor down because I'm at anchorage, which doing that actually raised the bow and lowered the stern, and then with my stern ramp at 60 degrees, which puts that weight aft, so that lowered my stern by about 2 or 3 inches. So when I'm transferring my water, when it was all said and done, I transferred to exactly 25 down by the stern, and then I was about 24.6 up on the bow. And then when I raised my anchor and I put my stern ramp up, that put me about 24 feet 9 inches on the bow and on the stern. But you can see I could lower this thing. If I put my flap out, the cows could walk right aboard. They were back there. This is me. I went up top, and I think I got a video here. I don't know if you can hear it. Here we go. I don't know if it'll play, but I pan around. The wind's blowing a little bit. We'll see if this thing will load. It might take a second, but it was kind of cool. It was interesting because we were getting some complaints from some of the barges because I was anchored in the anchorage, but the anchorage.
Here it is, Lower Sabine anchorage. The ship is anchored in the anchorage. Back aft. You can almost, if I put the ramp down any further, the cows could come aboard. What an adventure. Here it is.
So what I said there is we were anchored. The forward of the ship, because remember the ship's 750 feet long. The forward part is, I had the port anchor down, and it's up there in the anchorage. Well, you saw the stern, the back end of the ship there, goes all the way across, so you're covering the entire channel. Now, up a bed, it's like a bend, and there's a bunch of vessels anchored off here to the right, like barges. They could get out over there, but they were complaining that we were taking up the whole channel. But it was like, we're paying for the anchorage, so whatever. We were only there for a few days. This is the tug. Remember I disconnected it, and then he was on standby in case we blew away or whatnot. We just pretty much blew into the mud, and we weren't going anywhere. So after we finished all the transfer of water, here's the submersible pumps. We pulled them all out of the holds, and like I said, it was a lot of water. We moved 900 tons of water from back aft to forward. Here's the anchor once I pulled it. Some good old Texas mud on it. What a beautiful anchor. And then once we reached up to Marad, here are some supervisors that came aboard via this is a barge crane, and they came aboard. It was funny because these guys came aboard and they looked at me, and I'd asked for 4 additional guys to help out, and I ended up with 3 guys. So it was me, 3 guys, so that's 4. And then I had my bosun and my third mate, my cue mate, had been up all night. So it was my bosun, and that was it. Now I had my chief engineer, so there were essentially 5 of us. And then I ended up having the chief came out and helped a little bit. But you got 5 guys. Oh, and the port engineer was there too. Jim, shout out to you if you're watching. So these guys came aboard, and they looked at me and they said, where are all the, because they're wires. You have to bring on these wires, like 1.5 inch wires. Like, well, where is everybody? And I was like, what do you mean, where's everybody? He's like, well, They said you were going to have 40 line handlers. 40. I looked at them. I was like, well, I said, you have 4, then you have me, and that's an army of 1. Ha ha. But we did it. It wasn't a big issue. Just a lot of work. So this is Cape Florida where we tied up. And you see the wire that we ran down here. We ended up doing bites of wire. We did 4 on the stern. We did 4 midships. Then we did 4 up forward. And then there was a big emergency wire. And it was a little bit finagling. I was definitely tired by the end of the exercise. Here we are now. The gangway is being set up behind me here. Another selfie. And we're heading, about to head down the gangway, getting real close. Now, this is me. So that's, you see how the legs kick up on that stern ramp? Because now it's home and we're at the Marriott berth. And you can see the railing there. That's stern ramp. It sticks up a lot further. And that's why we had to put it down to the 60 degrees. I got a couple pictures here. Just passing the ship, all tied up. And we're leaving, saying goodbye. And I put my gangway down. There's that barge crane out there that we'd use to bring the guys aboard. And that's it. Farewell. Now that's the very end. So this is me, my bosun, my port engineer Jim, and then my chief engineer. And I had a couple more guys. They weren't in the picture. They were actually off. They've been up all night. Then here was a good picture somebody else had snapped of the ocean wave towing us into Texas. So yeah, so that was kind of the adventure. So the good ship Mighty Martin is now mothballed and in Texas. And I hope everybody enjoyed that. If you have any questions or if you like any of these pictures, definitely shoot me an email. thefutureischeapnow@gmail.com. Check out my other videos. I mean, I'm just doing kind of random stuff. I try to focus on the future being cheap now, opportunity. Just, I don't know, that's what interests me. And I have some people have been interested, and I think it's a huge opportunity. But if you like this, let me know, and I could, when I can. I mean, I've always got a lot of pictures, but like I said, a lot of them I can't really share. These, though, I'd already seen them, a lot of these over Facebook, and I might post this on some of the social media things. I'd seen some of these, and I actually added to some of what they already had. So anyways, thank you all for watching, and everybody stay safe for this coronavirus, and until next time, thank you all.